You could call the roll.
Chairman Leahy,
Present.
Council Lowell,
Present.
Council Mercia.
Here.
Three
Thank
present.
Thank you. We're here tonight for the Neighborhood Subcommittee meeting for discussion regarding amending Chapter 104 of the city ordinance to permit the keeping of farm animals and fowl for personal use. I thought we'd start the meeting off, let the speakers come up first. Proponents of the ordinance probably could go first because last time we seemed to run out of time. So if you'd like to come up, as long as your name is spelled out on the paper on the podium, and then if we can try to limit our discussion to maybe 3 minutes if we could. So if anyone would like to come up and speak first. Thank you.
Hi, Craig Himmelberger, 200 Market Street, downtown Lowell. Someone just asked me if I'm for or against chickens, and I can't answer that question, but I'd like to read the following just for a minute. Lowell currently suffers trash and other refuse piled up on city properties without consequence. The current condition of the Hamilton Canal Wasteway is a perfect example. It's in my neighborhood. Chickens, to me, aren't a particular issue here, but the clear and enforceable guidelines for noise, appearance, and contaminants should be. When chickens fail to meet rigorous tests, they should be treated like any other nuisance. When chickens pose no noise, appearance, or contamination burden on neighbors, they shouldn't be singled out as a particular problem. Lowell's density would make the number of locations appropriate for chickens far fewer than in many surrounding communities. However, this does not mean that all properties in this city are inappropriate for chickens. We should be discussing what is required for chickens, from square footage to setbacks to standards for noise and contamination, and put it all on the table for discussion. All properties failing to meet those standards should be easily agreed to be forbidden for the keeping of chickens. Disagreements should be focused on these reasonable standards. The keys I see are zoning requirements for square footage, setbacks, and agreeable community standards for noise and contamination. Properties and their owners meeting all standards for space, distance, quiet, and cleanliness are no burden on anyone and shouldn't be the reason to outlaw chickens under those circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Linda Harvey, and I would like to see the subcommittee recommend that the City of Lowell amend its bylaw against chickens. Before I moved to Lowell, I lived in Groton, where people are allowed to raise a variety of animals. For several years, I worked at the Herb Lyceum at Gilson Farm. The Gilsons raised an extensive variety of herbs and plants. They also raised about a dozen chickens. The hens were well cared for and caused no nuisance, noise, safety, or health concerns. Gilson's abuts school buildings, and children, including my daughter, would walk over after school to Gilson's.
Could I just ask you to pull the microphone a little closer to you? Thank you.
Okay. Would you like me to repeat anything else?
I got most of it, I think.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No one got sick. If you're worried about getting sick, just read the news. Outbreaks come from huge farms that produce vegetables and animals that are harvested and sold to grocery store chains. Larger cities than Lowell have found out what works, and we can learn from them. We are not talking about turning Lowell into Purdue Farms. Every Massachusetts town began with farms, and for the life of me, I cannot understand how chickens or other animals were banned here. Help people do what they can to feed their families, and you also have the opportunity to teach children. I happily dine on fresh eggs, fresh from New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Deal. I live on Floyd Street here in Lowell. I'm dead set against another ordinance. This city can enforce the ordinances they have now. And I'll bring up a couple. You have the parking placards. Parking placards went into effect, well, it was passed last July and went into effect in December. The ordinance was passed, there was no money appropriated, there was no means of someone enforcing it. To this day, no one enforces a thing with the parking. I was here last year trying to get a CAD ordinance passed. They says, go pound sand. Not interested, it says, we do not have the means to enforce it. How the hell are you going to enforce chickens in someone's yard? I said, I'm a lot older than most of you people, and I don't know if you remember, but over on Chelmsford Street, all those 9-family houses, people used to put their chickens in their kitchen cupboards. All those places burnt down. I said, you people have to have rocks in your head if you let people put chickens. Next thing you know, you're going to have cats and rats and elephants in the yards. I said, because you can't enforce what you have, I don't see how you can possibly let people start bringing farm animals in Lowell. You can't control the dogs or anything else in the city of Lowell. Dead set against it. I said, if you're looking for votes, shame on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rick Steck. I live at 202 Lawrence Street in Lowell. I'm active in the city's art and music community. I've attended Middlesex Community College and UML. I co-coordinate CTI's Community-Supported Agriculture Program. I foster rescue animals from the Humane Society. I contribute and volunteer for political campaigns, and I've served on the Hunger Homeless Commission as an officer for a number of years. I've made a career in Lowell's social service industry. I'm a homeowner, taxpayer. I vote. I also own a flock of laying hens in the city. I know many people who are like myself. This issue has come about because myself and other individuals who are concerned about the growth of this, but the lack of any way to regulate it other than saying that it can't happen. Sorry. The reason this has become an issue is because my colleagues and I have brought this to the table because we feel like this is a growing aspect of city life, that there's been a resurgence of urban agriculture, and we want to make ourselves available as a resource to the city so that there can be reasonable regulation around this happening. I know that it's happening. I'm doing it myself. This isn't a matter of conjecture or anecdote. This is the natural fact of my day-to-day life. And there were no issues with our neighbors. And before this was brought up to talk about at City Council, and then it was made into an issue, and someone outside of our neighborhood called to complain. I'd like to see us at least have some reasonable regulation around this. I think it is our civic duty to say that it's a requirement of the city that I don't think that we should be sticking our head in the sand about this. There are people that are doing it. There are plenty of resources available, people who are active that can help the city make a good decision moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Dave Iverson. I'm a Lowell native, a columnist for Merrimack Valley Magazine, and I am a English language arts instructor at Greater Lowell Technical High School. As a professional educator, I can attest to the fact that one of the least effective and most unfair methods of classroom management is punishing an entire group for the actions of a few. It is within this same framework that I protest the ordinance banning the keeping of chickens within the city limits of Lowell. There are plenty of us who are responsible citizens and who extensively lend to the city's cultural and creative fabrics who have been penalized by this ordinance both in practice and in principle due to the actions of the few against which it was originally passed. Included in the curriculum which I teach is Henry David Thoreau's Walden. In accordance with Thoreau's environmentalist and conservationist philosophies, I have students do a group project where they have to create an imaginary homestead that integrates the author's ideology with the trade skills that they are studying in school. Many students ask how they could possibly replicate a homestead such as Thoreau's in a city like Lowell. To model the answer to this question, I show them the documentary film Homegrown Revolution about an urban homestead in Pasadena, California. Part of the Dervais family's blueprint is the keeping of chickens on their 1/5 of an acre lot, only 15 minutes from downtown Los Angeles and all its associated sprawl. The students are always fascinated and inspired by this film. As their teacher, I want nothing more than to be able to answer yes truthfully when they excitedly ask me if I think such a project would ever be possible in Lowell. With the current ordinance in place, this is not the case. No argument I've heard thus far should be prohibitive to the allowance of keeping chickens in this city, provided certain prerequisites are met. With the very principles of personal freedom, progressivism, and food independence in mind, please consider the drafting of a new, less draconian ordinance. I will close with words from Founding Father Thomas Jefferson. If people let the government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls of those who live under tyranny. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Troy Betancourt, longtime resident of Lowell and first generation. I grew up in Back Central, and my family originally is from the Azores Islands. We're Portuguese, and I grew up with chickens. We had chickens, say Pollard Street, off Central Street, sometimes on Central Street, and it was never an issue. We took care of our chickens. My dad took care of our chickens, my aunt, my uncles, my godparents. Later in life, when I was a young man, we moved up to Belvedere, right down the street from George Duncan on River Road. Down Raven Road on River Road. And that allowed my dad to have more chickens. This was in the mid to late 80s and into the mid 90s. And it was never a problem. There was never a problem with our neighbors. Nobody ever complained. If anything, our neighbors would drop off the table scraps and whatnot in our backyard. And it was kind of like a petting zoo at times. The kids would come over. My dad would give out baby rabbits and chicks to the kids around Easter and the holidays. And then when they got too big, the parents would come and bring them back. And we kept the chickens, and we had lots of eggs for everybody. It was never really an issue. So I really support this doing away with the ordinance. And I would say that, you can't really, there are going to be people who aren't going to be as responsible. But you know what? People aren't as responsible with keeping their dogs as well, or maybe even with their parking. So I don't think that we should really harm everybody and ban everyone from keeping chickens just because of a few people. My community has been keeping them for a long time. I know people who still have them. And unless we're going to start going to their houses and culling their chickens, I think that we should really look at a way to try to let people keep them. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is John Hamblett. I am co-chair of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council. I live at 495 Varnum Avenue. First, I'll speak with my PCC hat on, just a point of clarification. Several people have asked me why the Pawtucketville Citizens Council is against chickens and against urban farming. And so I'd like to clarify that the PCC has not taken a position on chickens or urban farming. The PCC board met. We discussed chickens. Some members were in favor. Some members were opposed. No vote of the board has been taken. The issue has not been presented or discussed with the membership, and there's been no public vote. Views expressed by the board of the PCC, including myself, in regards to urban farming, and more notably chickens, are the opinions of the individuals only and do not represent the views of the neighborhood. Let me take off my PCC hat, speak as an individual citizen of Lowell. I am in favor of the urban farming initiative with reasonable regulations and rules. And I want to thank Councilor Joe Mendonça for bringing the issue to the public for discussion. At the last meeting, and that was May 21st, I heard those opposed to urban farming speak with great emotion, but with few facts. Urban farming is very popular. 93 of the 100 largest cities now allow chickens, and there is plenty of data out there. So let's look at some facts. As some of you know, I'm a beekeeper. Beekeeping is legal in Lowell. I have 2 hives in my backyard. But you don't see them in every yard. And so it raises the question, if you allowed chickens, how many chickens are there going to be? In April of 2013, this year, a study conducted by the United States Department of Agriculture of 4 major cities indicates that about 6 out of every 1,000 households will raise chickens if they're allowed. If we use the figure that Bud Caulfield gave us at the May 21st meeting, we could expect about 16 chicken coops, I don't know what you call them, 16 chicken coops per square mile if the ordinance allowed everyone, high-rise dwellers, everyone, to keep chickens. But in more dense situations like New York City, the density only has 1 chicken coop per 1,000. The other issue that was raised was the enforcement of urban farming laws. In 2010, there was a study at DePaul University. 23 cities were surveyed on chicken ordinances. They asked 7 questions. I thought 4 of them were relevant to this conversation. Question 1, have you seen problems with people abandoning chickens or them getting loose? Of the 20 cities, these aren't 20 individuals, these aren't 20 neighborhoods, these are 20 cities. Of the 20 cities responding to this question, 17 out of the 20 indicated chickens getting loose was not a problem. 3 reported isolated incidents. And 1 city reported that the adoption of the ordinance actually reduced complaints because the ordinance required chickens to be confined in coops. That is, they weren't free range. The second question is, how many violations of the ordinance has your community detected? So I was thinking of numbers in my head, but the answer is, of the 18 cities that responded, 10 reported no violations at all. 6 reported 1 to 4 violations. I can't speak on behalf of animal control, but my sense is that 4 violations might be a manageable figure within existing staffing and personnel. How many complaints about chickens has a city seen since the ordinance was passed? Of the 19 cities responding to the question, 13 reported 0 to 2 complaints. I don't know how many complaints the city gets in a year, but 0 to 2 sounds like a pretty small figure. 1 city stated complaints were rare. 2 cities reported between 5 and 10 complaints, and 3 cities reported 12 or more. And lastly, and I think this is a question we should be asking, in your estimation, has the adoption of a chicken ordinance been positive or negative in your city? Of the 21 cities that responded, 15 reported it had been positive, 6 said it was neutral, and no cities reported a negative experience. No cities. I'm asking through this subcommittee, that our city council develop a reasonable set of regulations that will promote urban farming. And then I'm asking the city council to vote yes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marian Grease. I live at 41 Buttman Road. I'm also a member of the Lowell Food Security Coalition, and I support people's ability to have urban farming in the city of Lowell. Food insecurity is a huge issue that's facing our country and our city, and I think that anything that empowers our residents to grow their own food is something that's good for our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean Jennison, live in South Lowell. I've gotten a lot of mixed responses about me even coming here, saying that there's no way that anything's ever going to change. Basically, you guys have your minds all made up. But I really hope that you listen to the people, because there was someone running for city council who came to my house, and I asked him how he felt about this ordinance. And he told me that he'd have to see something in writing, but he doesn't see why that it would be a problem, that they shouldn't be able to tell us what we can and cannot do, you know, to a limit, as long as there's some regulations to be set as far as square footage and whatnot. And I know most people are here for the chickens, and I think that that's a great idea. I think people should be able to raise their own chickens if they'd like. But there's also another part of it, which is the other farm animals. And I'll tell you a little story. In August, my son and the rest of my family, my little nieces, went up to Maine camping. And there was a pig scramble up there. Long story short, we came home with a pig. We have a pen set up in the backyard. It does not smell. There aren't any issues. There were all the neighbors around know there is no smell. Somebody called because they knew that there was a pig on the property. And I got a visit from animal control, and I have a 30-day notice to have it off the property. I just don't understand why there should be an ordinance. There's pot-bellied pigs that people have for pets. And right now, this animal is a pet, and the kids love it. But once it gets to be too big, it's going to be food for everybody. And this whole city was raised as a farm community at one time, and this whole world is losing that. We're importing more food now than we ever have, and the farming community in this whole country's decreased. I'm not asking for people to have pig farms in their yards and Lowell, but if you set an ordinance and say, okay, you can have X amount of pigs per X amount of land, and as long as it's well kept, animal control is there to enforce the rules. I mean, I got somebody complained and they came to enforce this. So I don't see why either animal control or even set up another division to have inspections. Surprise inspections. You get inspected 2-3 times a year. You don't tell them when. Just show up, and if there's any problems or if people complain that there's a smell or whatever. I just don't understand, and I just don't like the fact that when I talk to some people and they tell me, oh yeah, I don't see why there's a problem with it. Well, Dan Rourke, who's running for city council, he's the one that I spoke to. And he's the one that told me that he doesn't see why, but yet in today's paper he's quoted as saying that he's against it. When he was at my house the day I got this violation, telling me otherwise. And I just hope that you listen to everybody and take into mind, it's not just chickens, and it's all animals. It's one pig, one backyard. The animal control officer that came, if you read this right here, it says pig female, black and white, in good condition and clean pen. It doesn't smell, so I don't understand why as long as it's kept clean and everybody else is fine with it, I don't understand why. But thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rachel Chandler. I'm a homeowner, a taxpayer, a voter. I work here in the city. As you heard earlier, my husband also does. We are part of a larger group of people, some of whom are here tonight, some of whom have become nervous about advocating for themselves due to the tone that this discussion has taken over the last few months. Tonight, I speak also for many others. I speak for several hundred supporters, including a list that I have brought with me here that I can furnish. But due to the early time and short notice, are commuting, are at other events, at other meetings, and such. You have been provided a great deal of science and facts to support the legalization of chicken keeping with provisions in Lowell. You've been provided examples of cities that are much denser, whose property values are better than Lowell, where hen keeping is successfully happening every day. This is not a vote that can take place without real facts considered and a draft of an ordinance to consider. Given that you've been given so much of the facts and so much of the science and can reference that, and I can furnish it as needed again, and can sit with any counselor or any council candidate who is interested in understanding more detail, I would gladly have coffee at any time. But given that you've been given that, I instead would like to let you know the face of an urban homesteader a little more intimately, which is me. I've decided that I'm from Lowell. I don't know how legitimately to get that badge. I think it's related maybe to heritage, but I came to go to UMass Lowell many years ago, some odd years ago, and have lived here ever since. I think my contribution to the city should count for something. Something towards that badge that allows me to be from Lowell. You know you're from Lowell when you know where Sun Foods was, and you find yourself in a Facebook fight with someone who misrepresents the crime rate of the city. That counts for something. I've done both of those things. I bought a house in the Highlands and then found my dream spot in unassuming Back Central, where I live now. I volunteer in my community on committees and for events. I advocate for my neighbors and others in my community and always have. I'm a co-founder of UTEC, have sat on a number of BODs in my time, including the YWCA, though most of the other BODs have been animal welfare agencies. I'm a joiner. People ask me to do things I take on too much. I ran workshops during Earth Day on making cheese and jam. I like dogs more than cats. And I love Lowell. What I love about it is the peach and the quince trees in my third of an acre backyard and the river that I can hear that runs behind them. Those trees were planted by a gentleman who owned the house before us. He brought grape seeds from Portugal and transformed that property. He kept his hens in a more traditional-looking barn structure, my neighbors tell me. We hoped that he would be proud of what we've done with the property. I've learned so much from what he's built and from my neighbors. I love Lowell for our natural resources. Up on the sidewalk of my neighborhood, so many languages are spoken, and I can walk to any number of restaurants serving ethnic food by people who know how to cook those recipes. I love Lowell for the diversity. I want to stay here and continue contributing to the city. I think you know that I'm a good person and a productive and important part of the landscape. But I have mobility, and I need to be in a city that shares my values. I'm not an anomaly. There are others like me here, and there are those who are considering buying property here. And I want you to know that while passing this ordinance revision may not turn our opposition against you as a counselor, not passing it will mean that I and a percentage of our supporters absolutely will no longer support you. Not specifically because you didn't pass this ordinance or this revision, not specifically because of this, but because this moment tells me so much about how you define progress and the future of the city and who you advocate for. To our constituency, this Chapter 104 revision is a canary in the cave. Maybe others don't watch it like that, but I do. It tells us an awful lot about where we're going and is part of how we plan for our own future. The facts of how this is working in other cities will support that, and I hope you will consider the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. None of these names that you submitted have addresses. They say Lowell, they say the person's name, but there's no street addresses whatsoever.
I can send you the electronic link to it.
What's that?
I can send you the electronic link to it, and that'll show you. And it's based on IP address.
Well, could you send it to the clerk's office? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Carol McCarthy. I co-chair the Sacred Heart Neighborhood Improvement Group. I am also a lifelong resident of the city of Lowell. I live at 64 Blossom Street. A lot of the speakers tonight have said punish all because of a few. You know, that's the problem within the city of Lowell. Look at the dog ordinance. How many dogs that are out there are not licensed, are not registered? You do call the animal control officer and you tell them. I mean, their hands are tied. There's few there to enforce any ordinances that are out there. We're also here tonight and we're speaking, but we have the cart before the horse. There is no ordinance in place as of yet. So we're standing here saying whether we want chickens or we don't want chickens. I love horses and dogs. Second, I have dogs because I live in the city of Lowell. I don't think I could have a horse, or I think animal control might probably visit me and tell me to get rid of it. So it's not whether we're going to have chickens or we're not going to have chickens. I'm an educator also. I see a field trip in sight. Let's take a view of the city of Lowell, walk through each neighborhood, check out the neighborhoods. Let's see how close all our homes are to each other. If we're going to have an ordinance, I'd rather stand here and saying, okay, I know the setbacks. I know how far from my property line or the property line that I can have a coop or not. Is it how many feet? Is it feet from backyards or from front yards, from side yards, from driveways? We have nothing in place, and we're standing here, and we're not arguing with each other, but we have nothing concrete before us. So we can say, you know what? In my neighborhood, yes, I can see 2 or 3 people that might be able to have a coop. I don't know how Back Central could do that. Their houses are so close that they even fight for parking spots. Also, we talked about keeping these chickens in coops. Who's going to control that? We have these weekend and after-hours violators. Who knows that after 5 o'clock at night when City Hall, the City of Lowell locks down, that these people aren't going to let the chickens run loose. And it is, and I am sorry to say, punishing the ones that would probably be the ones that would actually follow the ordinance to a T from the ones that would not follow the ordinance. Look around now. How many have illegal pets on their properties now? And they know they're illegal, but they're hiding them. Let's take a look at our housing. How many people have illegal apartments in their houses, but yet it goes on? How many people repair their roofs and things on the weekend or after hours because you can't pick up City Hall saying, this person can do it with overnight and they don't have a permit to do it, but they're doing it. So you call City Hall the next day saying, well, my neighbor just put a brand new roof on his house and he doesn't have a permit. I can't prove it, you can't prove it because the roof is all finished. So all I'm saying is it's just another ordinance that we're looking at. Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to be in charge of it? I mean, I think animal control is already overextended. So I think what we need before us, first of all, is an ordinance that we can all sit down, talk about it, then take a walk through all the neighborhoods and see what neighbors can or cannot have chickens on their property. Thank you.
my name's Bob Rafferty. I'm from 113 Walker Street in Lowell. I'm a lifelong Lowell resident. I'm also a farmer. There's been a lot of opinion that I've heard here tonight. And what I think this really comes down to, if we're going to make an educated decision, is fact. Fact of the matter is, research has already been done on this. It is being done successfully in many cities. The Massachusetts Department of Agriculture has already pointed toward urban agriculture as the future of agriculture in Massachusetts. Between 1990 and 2000, the size of farms in Massachusetts were reduced by 1/3, and that 1/3 of those farms were sold off to housing. If that 10-year trend continues, where do we find ourselves in 20 years? Where will our farms be? So at some point, we need to prepare for the future. This isn't my opinion. This is fact that's been researched by the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, and it is a trend that will continue. We will continue to lose farm space because we are the most densely populated state in the Union, and people need places to live. So we need to lay a groundwork now for urban agriculture. I've been at the heart of this matter from the beginning. I've sat through the Board of Health meeting on it. The Board of Health really didn't find any problems with the keeping of chickens in backyards. One of the members of the Board of Health also sat on the Somerville Board of Health when they passed their ordinance allowing the keeping of chickens. And she said the only problems that they had was there was one snowstorm where a chicken got out of a coop and was stuck in a snowbank. And I think one incident really doesn't point to this as being problematic whatsoever. Where we do have problems is that we have otherwise law-abiding citizens who wish to produce food for themselves who aren't being allowed because of this ordinance. In my memory, the reason chickens were made illegal in Lowell to begin with were traffic incidents, because chickens were being free-ranged at the time. The police department got sick of it. Chickens were being hit by cars at the time. I remember the article running in the Lowell Sun. And we've reached a different point. During that period of time, we had a large immigrant influx into Lowell. People came from different cultural farming practices. And we've come a long way since then. And knowledge has trickled down since then. And people have become, for lack of a better word, Americanized. And the immigrants that have come into the city have come into places of power. They're within our city council. They're all over this city, making this city better. And people want this as part of their life. They want to provide food for themselves. You have problems like chickens being kept in kitchen cabinets because there is an ordinance against this. If a person was allowed to have a coop in their backyard under safe guidelines set down by the Board of Health, you wouldn't see chickens in kitchen cabinets. People are bringing them inside because they're afraid. And this is part of their way of life, and they're not willing to give up their way of life. At any point when you've had prohibition in America of things that are otherwise a part that is central to people's cultures, you've made those people criminals when they're not. They're law-abiding citizens that are maintaining a healthy part that is central to their cultures. You've heard today testimony that over 20 cities are doing this, and it's working correctly. Part of the thing that I've seen as I've gone from neighborhood group to neighborhood group regarding this is prejudice and discrimination. I was asked at one neighborhood group, what's the ethnicity of these people who are in your group that wish to keep chickens? I don't see how that's pertinent to this matter whatsoever. The other discrimination that I've seen is if we're going to allow pigeons to be kept within the city of Lowell, which we do, that's a much dirtier endeavor than keeping a chicken ever is. And if you go to the Board of Health regulation on keeping pigeons, pigeons are allowed, once they die, to be left in open ditches on the property to rot. Pigeon manure is allowed to be left in open ditches to rot. What the Lowell Chickens Group has put forward is much safer regarding chicken manure. We've asked for sealed composters and for that chicken manure to compost until it's ready to be used into a garden. That's not called for with the keeping of pigeons. And if there's only 2 pigeon licenses that are being issued in the city of Lowell, why are those people being allowed a special permit when obviously there are many people here tonight that would wish to have chickens that are for this, and we're being disallowed, and we're otherwise up and up citizens of the city of Lowell? I think that all of the facts have been placed before you people. I think you know what the positive, right decision is in this matter, and I just hope that you'll make it. Thank you.
Councilor Laura? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, sure. I'll after. Go ahead. Well, I know you spoke at the first one, that's why go ahead.
And you're going to speak at the second one, so go right
She
ahead.
is.
My name is Anne Marie Page. I reside at 26 Fremont Street, where I own my home with my husband. I'm Lowell born, Lowell bred, and someday I'll be Lowell dead. I've got the plot and I got my name on the stone, so we've got that out of the way. I, like many of the other people here, volunteer. The neighborhood leaders are not on anybody's payroll. We come down here because we try to do what's best for our neighborhood, as you do as councilors. Right now, from what I understand, we do have rules and regulations in the city of Lowell that say no chickens and no farm animals. That I understand. Whether it's enforced or not, that's for you to worry about. But that's the way it is. I've had many people stop me after our meeting, I think it was in May, and the meeting here was, well, what do people think? They think what I thought when I first heard it. You gotta be kidding. And that's what the majority have said. They're kidding. No, they're not kidding, they're dead serious. I'm probably one of the oldest people in this room, so I remember when we had chickens. And I can remember seeing the chicken in the yard, slaughtering the chicken, pluck it, and it's on the table. That's that. That was then, this is now. And the reason why, and I'm sure somebody can verify it, but the reason why they stopped it was rats. Chickens attract rats, as they attract other animals, other critters. And that evening, there was a neighbor from Centerville who spoke up and said she grew up on Methuen Street. And the neighbors next door had chickens. And in the summer, you couldn't sit out in your backyard because of the odor. And if the wind shifted, you'd have to shut all the windows in your house because of the odor. So we didn't tell the chickens to leave town just because we didn't think they were cute. There had to be a very legitimate reason. So for the welfare of all, a few had to give up their chickens. And we all know how the food chain goes. I've eaten the chicken, I've eaten the rabbit, I've had the squirrel, I've skinned the deer, I've had the venison, I've had the snow goose. I know how it goes. Right now in Demoulas, the cheapest thing you can buy is a chicken and an egg. So it's not that people are starving. The fear is the enforcement. And I understand, don't punish everybody because of a few, but it's always the few that spoil it. We have rules and regulations. We have them now on the books. Are they all enforced now? I don't think so. Are there chickens out there now? Yes. Are there other farm animals out there now? Yes. So the question is, we have enough on our plate in the city of Lowell right now that I don't think that the majority of people really need to have chickens in their neighborhood to be added. And the majority of the people that have spoken to me, called me, or emailed me from the Citywide Neighborhood Council have said they don't want chickens. In fact, they're asking, are you kidding? No, we're not kidding. We're dead serious. But there was a reason the chickens were asked to leave town, and we don't need to bring it back. And someone says, oh, well, they have them in other cities. I don't live in other cities. That's why God sent Westford and Chelmsford and Carlisle and all these other little towns, because they have a lot of farmland and they would love to have chickens and farm animals. Lowell is the 4th largest city in the state. We are building and building and building. We are very busy. We have a lot going on, and I don't think chickens on the plate is something that will help the neighborhoods. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before anyone else gets up to speak, we've had a lot of people on both sides define our health department and animal control office rules, and they're here. I'd like to welcome them up front, the Board of Health and our animal control officer, and have them come up here before any other speakers. As I said, we've had both sides defining their jobs and what they do and what they're going to do. And I'd like to welcome them in their opinion. Any other speakers? Otherwise, I was going to have...
Just one quick comment.
Just before I ask them some questions.
Well, Animal Control can probably verify this. Bill Daly, Floyd Street in Lowell. I don't know how many people realize this, and she can probably back this up. And like Anne Marie Page was saying about the smell and everything, drawing rats or whatever. If people only realize how many coyotes are in the city of Lowell.
Oh, yeah.
There's coyotes, Hovey Street, Hill, they just went after one on Barica Street, walking the Lowell Cemetery, they're up by Shed Park. There's more coyotes in the city of Lowell than people have a clue. And if you don't think having chicken farm animals in the city of Lowell are going to draw more coyotes or wildlife into the city, and then you're going to end up losing the cats running around the street or dogs or whatever else, you're going to have more problems than you bank on. Thank you very much.
We had a report we received from the animal control officer. We didn't receive anything from the Board of Health. Right.
So I can't respond to the motion because I don't know what types of farm animals and how they're going to be handled.
If you want to speak up to the mic. If there's a
Or
report...
just turn it on.
Yeah.
See the green light.
And we don't have you're right, we don't have an ordinance. What would be the report that you'd want to read?
Well, basically, the Board of Health's taken no position on this, but there are health impacts, obviously, if animals, chickens in particular, are improperly handled. I have a handout here from CDC, Center for Disease Control, on outbreaks of salmonella that have occurred with when people don't wash their hands, and a handout from mass.gov, which is on petting zoos and the like, same thing. But the reality is, chickens are not pets, though they may be conceived by some people are. They're farm animals. Farm animals are designed to be eaten or to generate a usable product. And ultimately, most of the time, there's slaughtering and other issues that come into play, which I'm sure a regulation would cover. But I just wanted the memo I've got just points out that you can't confuse pets. You can, for example, if you slaughter a kitten, you're in jail for 2 years. If you slaughter a lamb to create lamb chops, it's perfectly legal under state and local law. Not that I'm saying that they're allowed here. So there's a distinction here I'm trying to make between a farm animal which serves a purpose and often is handled differently, ultimately including made into a product such as what shows up on your plate, and a product that basically, something like a pet, which is not handled the same way, as long as people understand the distinction. I was in the Peace Corps in Brazil a number of years ago. I raised animals in the back. I actually killed animals and the like. I'm very familiar with what squeal like a stuck pig means, if you ever heard the phrase. If you ever cut a pig's throat, you know what I mean. I've taken them apart and put them on grills, so I'm certainly not opposed to where our food comes from. Right. Most people have been divorced from that experience, and things show up on white styrofoam trays magically because everything's behind closed doors now. If you have farm animals back in Lowell, you will have, I assume, farm handling, which will result in some cases in processing animals for food, and that's fine with me, but I think the regulation needs to cover those types of events. This is not basically a bunch of cute little pets running around the backyard. They ultimately get older, they stop laying eggs, and at least in farmers, they end up in the pot. And as long as people are aware of that. But right now, as long as it's properly regulated, as long as people obey the normal rules of thumb, like CDC shows here on hand washing after handling, farmers aren't dropping dead all over the country by raising chickens. It's a matter of common sense.
Let me ask you a question, something that came up. Well, I know we do have, people can own pigeons in the city.
That's an old, going back 25 or plus years when they first, the city council banned farm animals. And then as I understand it, before my time, there was some protesting from several gentlemen who had this as a hobby, and the council basically allowed that to be allowed as a use. And I had the health inspectors for 10 years before they were transferred to development services. I don't ever recall any problems with those two existing permits on the racing pigeons. So that regulation did seem to work in terms of no complaints, no nuisances or the like, even though they allow quite a few pigeons.
If they die, can you just leave them there?
No, they're not supposed to, but again, I assume they're going out on the trash. I don't think they're probably, even the reg may say put it in a ditch. No one's ever put a complaint in on that.
Okay.
But right now, I would assume that they can be composted in some cases, but that's difficult with meat. But I would assume they're going out as bagged waste because pigeons don't take up that much space.
Okay, thank you. From the animal control officer, we do have a...
Ask, for the sake of time, Councilor Mercia has another appointment, so let her speak, and then
Sure.
we'll hear from Animal Control.
Well,
Thank you.
first off, I want to just say that I'm very sorry because I have to be somewhere at 6:30, so I had made a commitment a month ago, didn't know this subcommittee was going to come up, and I did make a promise, and I'm not a twin, and I don't know how to split myself in half. But I will say that this is a very touchy subject, very, very much so, and that I won't kid anybody. I was supporting the this right to have the hens to lay the eggs. I was supporting that. But the more I was out and about and met people and they gave me their opinions, I have to tell you that I've kind of changed, and I'm not going to deny it. And I've done a lot of research, and I'm concerned about so many issues that I just have to explain it. When you have these hens, you need veterinary care. I don't know how many people are going to establish that. I know you can get a dog and never bring it to a vet. These are not the proper people that should be owning such a thing. I know the people here are good, decent people, and I hate to limit you for that. But it seems that people do things illegally, and then they want us to change the rules and make things right. And I don't know how we can do that, but the fact remains that we did get some information on the cost, so much so that it says that we got a report from the city manager talking about sequestration and how that affects the city of Lowell. And in jeopardy is the code enforcement line item, which is going to take a drastic plummet. It's in jeopardy of being lost due to sequestration to a very maximum degree. And I'm going to tell you, being in the city as many years as I have been, we try to do the best that we can, but it really, truly isn't always good enough. We have a code inspection department, inspectional service, departmental services. They're at the max. They go out and do a great job, but there's so much. There's abandoned houses. There's animal control. They're doing the best they can. And then we're going to add to it and have a chicken ordinance. And let me tell you the difference between chickens and pigeons. I know people think pigeons are dirty. These are homing pigeons. These are racing pigeons. There is a difference. They're not going to string them up and slit their necks and start eating them for supper or whatever. And I'm just telling you that as it goes, and I've been out and about all over this city, and I've asked that question, what do you think of this chicken ordinance? Should we create it? What's going on? And I know there are a lot here this evening that spoke in favor of it, but I have not heard good things about it. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm probably not always right. I know that you're not happy with me, but I'm not going to kid you. I can't support it. I can't support it because there are those that are going to think that because this ordinance is created, they're going to have these chickens. We heard from animal control, housing the loose or surrendered or seized or abandoned chickens. We don't have a facility in the Humane Society in Lowell for it. They would have to go to Methuen, and even in Methuen, they don't even have enough room to handle all this. I think it would get out of control. I don't think we can monitor it effectively. I'm sorry the people are here and hear me saying this because the majority of you were in favor of it. I just don't, this is a city that, I just don't see it happening. I've heard so many people, and if I took a tally or a vote, people aren't happy about it. It'll go a little further. They'll want to incubate hens. They'll need a rooster to make that happen. I can just see it getting out of control, and we have our hands tied as it is. So having said that, I don't know what's further going to happen. Are they going to reopen this and have other meetings? I don't know. I'm sorry, but I have a commitment, and I have to go now. I'm not trying to duck out on this issue. I would be put down in opposition, and if I were here, I would have made a motion to have no more further discussion and to proceed by not allowing this ordinance to take place. You can, yeah, you have a quorum. You're all set. You can do, in fact, if we voted to not support an ordinance, that's only our recommendation. It goes before the council, and the council can take a roll call vote. We're only three, six people could say they support it, so it still could pass. I'm just going on record because I have to leave. I don't want anybody to ever say that I ran out on my decision, that I was trying to duck the situation. I don't duck a situation. My heart goes out to you. You are the good people, but the majority of people out there are not as thorough and as caring as you, and I don't want to jeopardize and burden our inspectional service department any more than they already are. There's many issues out there that they need to look after: parking, abandoned houses, animal control. There's so many issues, and this would just add a little bit more to a problem that already exists there. So please forgive me. I'm sorry. You are the good people. I know that. My heart breaks for you because I love animals too. I love chickens, but I can't see that happening, and I'm giving you my opinion because I have to leave. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mercy.
Thank you. I'll continue. And this is one of the reasons why, and I didn't see Anne Marie Page getting up. I'm sorry, I'd raised my hand and I was acknowledged by the chairman, and I looked up and Anne Marie was walking over. But both sides have been saying so much, and I wanted the Health Department and the Animal Control Officer to be able to weigh in during a discussion. I didn't think it was fair to our own departments to sit to the side while comments were being made. I did get the police report. Now, first of all, we were just talking about the Health Department. The Health Department doesn't inspect the coops. It's the Animal Control Officers, right?
Animal control officers are responsible for inspecting the animals, which include the coops, because that is their living conditions.
Now, just looking at some of these, have you had any noise complaints? It just says nuisance issues. Have you had many? And we know there's some animals in the city, and that's just...
Correct. And let me just add one more thing to that last comment. If we come across, and this is when code enforcement and the health department also come in, and this is regulated with all animal complaints, if we come across something that is a health issue or a code enforcement issue, then obviously they are brought into it. Perfect example would be something such as, a hoarding house where they're for the animals, they're there for something else. The report that we presented from the Animal Control Division through the police department, it did list things that we would be concerned of. Again, Animal Control Division is neutral on the stance. We do not have a pro or against. All our concern is obviously that we have the enforcement for things such as noise, nuisance, odor, and things that we listed in our report. Have we had reports of those? We had reports of problem with farm animals, and I'll say farm animals because last year we had both chickens and pigs that we had to deal with. Have those complaints increased in the last, say, 6 weeks? Obviously, yes, and reason being, I'm sure, because people are trying to make a point, or people are becoming more aware of what is around, or also because of the weather, so now people are outside. Main complaints have just been that the animals are there. We have not come up with anything in, I would say, since May's meeting, we have not come up with anything that has been due to odor or due to a health issue.
How many animals have you picked up approximately?
We speaking in like the past year?
Animals, roosters,
The
fowl?
past year or since May?
Since May, yeah. Since the issue came up.
Since the issue came up, we have picked up, we had three pigs that were running up the street that we had to get. Chickens, we had one chicken that we have picked up. As far as complaints, those are animals we actually had to pick up and house. As far as complaints since May, off the cuff without going through, but I'm pretty sure I had the number correct anyways, we had 3 complaints with regards to farm animals. Those were all for pigs. And we had 8 complaints with regards to chickens.
And just for the record, I'm on the Animal Control Board, but at the May meeting, I backed off when we came to this point.
Correct.
Because I sit on the
both
council and I just didn't want to be involved. When you confiscate a rooster or a hen, is it the Humane Society that gets them?
No, we actually brought it out to MSPCA in Methuen. Humane Society, Lowell Humane Society, if they had to hold it overnight for us, they would in an emergency. Wignall, where we bring all our other animals, again, if they had to hold it overnight, they could. But to actually place it, to actually have it quarantined, it has to be quarantined 48 hours, has to be state blood test, and then, of course, find a home. We had a favor from MSPCA for that.
Do they charge us?
They did not.
Okay. I just wonder if there was any associated fees. If someone buys a hen, they have to go through the state agriculture, am I right with this?
They don't have to go through the state agriculture, but any chickens that are bought have to come with a clear certificate of health. And that is per flock. That's not, in other words, if you are picking up 6 hens, they don't have 6 separate health certificates. If they are all from the same flock, it would have one certificate for that flock.
My biggest concern as I go down, and we have about 30 or 40 people here, and I'm sure if they had a permit, they would probably be fine. I'm concerned on a widespread across the city, what the cost would be or what the results would be for the animal control officer. That's a very, I mean, we're having animals now that are, and it's people just aren't used to the ordinance, and let's leave it at that. But we have a lot of resources, it seems, going there now. And I have a concern we don't have the proper personnel going forward for a large scale. You know, I hear Boston has it, I hear all these towns have it. I was going through, looking at some of the ordinances. Some of the towns, they do have an ordinance that says you can have chickens if you go to the Board of Appeals. Well, the Board of Appeals, these towns might have 15,000 people. We have 105,000 people in a pretty busy Board of Appeals. So really, that wouldn't work in the city of Lowell. I looked at the list, and I know a lot of people in the city. If you narrow it down to, say, 15,000, 20,000 square feet, there's not a whole lot of lots in Lowell that I can think of that are going to have that much room. Pawtuckaville will, and this concerns me because I think Pawtuckaville has working farms still. A couple of working farms. Now, whether they use livestock or not, I don't know. But they are working farms. So do you look to write an ordinance with 2, 3, 4 acres? I share many of the concerns of Councilor Mercy. I mean, I'll be honest, we're out campaigning, and I'm well over 2,000 houses. And I can tell you right now, the majority of the people in this city do not want farm animals. And the reason is, and I understand urban farming, this is something new, something in the last 10 years. A lot of cities are trying to embrace it. We have a lot of people in Lowell who've lived here their entire life, myself included, and I'm from back central. And up until, I think it was 1993, 1994, we allowed chickens. We allowed, and some of the conditions around the city weren't the greatest. And I can tell you that I was a mailman in the city. Some of the conditions weren't the greatest. And I saw the chickens in the coops, and it wasn't because of an ordinance. That's where they were kept. I would go to have a letter signed, and there were chickens in the coop, and it was very legal to have chickens in the city in the late 80s and early 90s. So, but, and I have many of the concerns with, as I said, Councilor Mercia. I have a lot of concerns. We have one animal control officer, and I think Sergeant Coyle maybe. I think that just the two of us work.
We have 3 animal control officers, and Sergeant Coyle is our supervisor.
I just don't know if how much would a fee have to be? In your opinion, well, let's go to the health department. How big of a lot would we have to have?
How big of what?
For sanitary conditions in the city of
Well, it's
Lowell?
a square footage of, I think they were talking 2 square foot per chicken. I'd have to go back and look because there's a number of different ordinances out there, but essentially the enclosure is part of the coop because they're not allowed to freely, or they should not be allowed to freely roam.
Right.
So, and that's one of the issues of how much separating distance there would be from a property line or from another structure and the like. I mean, so again, and then you've got to clean out the bedding and deal with the aspects of that. And the bedding is soaked with urine and feces and becomes either compost or goes out in the trash. If it isn't raked out every day, it becomes an odor problem, that type of thing.
You know, and I think a lot of the cities and towns that may have embraced this, and I went online, many of them are smaller. Boston's large. I think Boston has a municipal chicken coop also. I think I've read Mayor Menino saw that in Rhode Island and brought it up. I think they don't sell it. I think they donate the food away. You know, I think on both sides, I think the people who were really opposed to this came on so quick. This really did. This came on last May or June. The city really didn't have a time to look at it, and half the city, I think, is probably apartments. I just don't know if we have the room in the city. I don't know if we could pass an ordinance in 6 weeks to make everybody happy. I really don't know. But I can tell you, the majority of the people in the city are totally against this ordinance. You know, do you try to limit it? Do you say 50 licenses? Do you say 30 licenses? I don't know if I'm ready to even say that because this really hasn't been discussed. 2 public meetings. I would say I'm with Councilor Mercier. I would just, at this point, I don't know if the city is ready to move forward with this. I'm not saying it won't happen next year, and I'm not saying urban farming, I think, is here to stay, and I think it's going to grow over the next few years. But I think in this situation, it just came on so quick. I don't think there's enough education on it. I think the talking points have taken over, but I just don't know if I'm ready to support changing the ordinance at this point. I would have to agree with Councilor Mercy, and I'm looking at some of the reports we got from the police, the enforcement, budget increase. So I don't know if our animal control division is ready for this. I know our sanitation officers are out every day. They're dealing with buildings, and I can tell you, I know we don't have the staff there. So at this point, I would agree with Councilor Mercy. I would probably send a message to the council. I couldn't support it, but of course the council has their vote. But I just have a lot of concerns at this point, a lot of unanswered questions. And I can look at ordinances from other towns, which I have, and I'm looking at towns with 15,000 people, 20,000 people. I've looked at Somerville, and I'm trying to compare the two with Lowell, and I'm just having a very hard time doing it. And when I hear, as I said earlier, when I hear the argument, if an individual had 20,000 or 15,000 square feet, they could have a coop. But what about the person with 5,000? What do we do with that person? And these are the issues that I'm really having a hard time with. I come from Back Central, which was very small lots, and when I walk around the city, and I'm talking Back Central, Centerville, Highlands, they don't have 10,000 square feet. They don't have 15,000 square feet. So how many people would really be eligible? So, you know, and I would just say at this point, I don't think the city has really studied this enough, and I don't feel comfortable moving forward with it. And I know some people will be upset, but honestly, I just in a city this size, I don't think, as a city council, and I don't think personally, this city's ready to move forward with this aspect of urban farming. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else to add? Okay, I just have one other question about, on your report. When you mentioned the wildlife, we have, and I've noticed, we've had an increase probably in wildlife going through the neighborhoods, fox, hawks, coyotes. Would that be, would you say
again,
that's on the increase, or?
increase in wildlife that has come into the city is mainly because the more you build, obviously wildlife gets pushed into more areas, more visible areas. As with any animal that you bring in, any wildlife, any agricultural farm animal, you would have an increase in wildlife. This is not just against chickens. If you were raising sheep, you're going to have coyotes because it's a food source. You know, and I hate to say this, I even tell people on their domestic animals, if you're leaving, you know, food in trash or things out to feed feral cat colonies, or because you think it's, you know, cute when the fox kits come up, you're going to have an increase because the animals are very basic and they only go off of a certain drive, and that is survival. So they will show up where food is. Will you have an increase in wildlife in the area that has chickens? Just out of the basic common sense that is a food source. I don't think that necessarily means if they were downtown, you're all of a sudden going to see a major increase of wild animals going down through the streets, but you certainly will see an increase anywhere, as you would with any food source.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to come up and speak before we conclude?
And again, I'm
Councilor.
apologize to Anne-Marie Page. I happened to raise my hand, and I was reading my notes, and I saw her walking to the pavilion, and I had to catch myself. But thank you very much.
Sure.
If we're unwilling to just go forward and alter the ordinance as it stands, what about the possibility of a pilot program where you have people here who are obviously diligent, who have showed up at city council meeting one after another and really believe in this and are diligent people? What about the possibility of having a pilot program and offering, you know, a select few licenses to a few people, see how that plays out over the course of 2 years, and whether we can re-examine it at that time?
I think that would, as I said, I said the same thing maybe about 30, 40. But where do you limit? I mean, there's some people, I've looked at that list, and as I said, I was a mailman, I know the city pretty well. A lot of the people on that list can't own any. They're in condo associations and things like that. Again, that could be up for discussion with the council. As I said, urban farming is going to be, that's here to stay. That's here to stay.
Right.
What I'm saying is right now, I don't think the city is ready to move, in my opinion, to move forward. And I'm not saying down the line it's a dead issue, but right now, we're not prepared. I don't think our health department's prepared. I'm not a farm person. I have no rural experience.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's coming into the city. And quite frankly, I don't know if we can deal with that. Or we're prepared to deal with that.
Well, I think that's a perfect opportunity for a pilot program to prove that we could be prepared for such a situation.
You know, as I said, one town has a Board of Appeals you can go to, and they have so many licenses. And I'm reading the comments underneath, they said it's a joke, they're just not giving out. Because the only way I would even consider doing something like that is one town I've read in their ordinance, you have to send out letters to the abutters.
Right.
And not necessarily if they complain, it shoots your application down, but from what I've read, I didn't see any passed. So your abutters would all have to be notified, and if you had one complaint, so that's why I'm saying, I just don't think the city, and again, I'm hearing it personally with phone calls, letters, as you have come forward, and I'm knocking doors campaigning, and I'm hearing, I don't want chickens. And that's why I'm saying, as a councilor, I don't know if the city administration or the city as a council is, with our ordinances, ready to move forward, but the city itself, I can tell you, it's a hotbed, they don't want it. And as a councilor, I'll listen to that too. I know you gave me a list and said, we won't vote for you. Well, that's fine. That's what public service is about. People want to come forward to me and say, I'm not going to vote for you. Fine, I'm not going to lie to you either. That's fine. Elect 9 people who let, the chickens in. I mean, that's life. But I don't fear these ordinances, and I don't fear being told, in a situation like this, we're not going to vote for you. Okay. That's something I have to live with. I'm basing my decision on a report I get from the police department and where I know where the city is right now. And I don't think the city, with an ordinance, with the size of the lots, with what I'm reading from other cities and towns, how they handle it, we're not prepared to do that. Our lots aren't that big. So when someone tells me 15, 20,000 square feet, I think Pawtuckaville, yeah, you might have some in Pawtuckaville, and I know you have work in farms. But I'm also hearing from other people across the city, I don't want chickens. And as I said, they were legal in Lowell to about 95. And I'm sure their experience was their neighbors weren't taking care of the chickens. And that's what I'm hearing. And that's why I'm saying it's a huge educational process going forward. And just to say now in 6 months, let's do it. I think it's an educational, urban farming will be an educational movement moving forward. And do I think there are people who will do it properly? Yes, I do. And I think there's people who will just do what they do at Easter with the chickens and the rabbits they buy. They're going to discard them. I think there are people who would try it and say, oh, this isn't for me. Then what do you do with it? Now we have the animal control officer. Now if we allow 4 chickens, 6 chickens, we have 10, 20 people that say, oh, I want to try it. Now we've got the animal control officers going out there getting 80 to 100 chickens, and what do they do with them? And this is a real fear for me. We live in a very condensed area, and this is a real fear for me as a city councilor. And it's a fear for your movement, because I'll tell you what, if that happens, you can count that dead in the water. If we give out X amount and this starts happening, that movement's gone in the city. And the people who are speaking against it now are going to be infuriated, and there you go. I think moving forward, what you really need is a real educational system, an education for the citizens of Lowell, which I'm sure, and I'm not positive, but I'm sure Somerville, Cambridge, that's what they did. They put out a total educational process before they even tried it. Here, we walked into the conversation and said, here we go.
I think a pilot actually would be exactly that kind of thing, is an opportunity for education.
Right.
And that lots of ways to do that is also, some cities have done it by lottery, not necessarily a handout of.
I would rather, you could do lottery, but I would, if it was me, a proponent, I would rather go to the people who I know are going to do it right and sell the idea, but that's me. I mean, that's.
Well, but I also, as I said before, I love the city. I want the right thing to happen.
Right.
So I'm not against a lottery of pulling tickets of people who want to apply, because that does give a more fair sample.
Right.
And I would like to see people I don't know do it well, who haven't been coached, and have to go and really take it as a pilot and see if that success can happen that way. Also, that 100-person list wasn't specific to say that they wouldn't vote for you.
And how many people have any experience with farm animals? I'm sure Mr. Rafferty does. His experience, I can tell you right now.
Is endless.
Mr. Steck, I'm sure he does. So we have 3. So you're gonna give out 50 licenses, but we have 3 people, and that's it, with any rural experience.
I also think
Now,
that we
let me
might
just
need to be
say,
able to give out
I
50
lived in Back
licenses.
Central, we did have the chickens, and that, I never had a bad experience. And that's why I'm really, I'm
Torn.
weighing this here. I talk to people who don't want them. I lived in Back Central, and honestly, I didn't have a bad experience, so.
And that's first. I also think that the fact of the matter is that I don't think that because you're a chicken issue supporter, doesn't mean you want chickens.
Oh, absolutely
It means you're
not.
supporting.
Right.
And I don't think you'll be able to give away 50 licenses. I got to
And-
tell you, I think that's way more than we're talking
I
about.
looked at that list, I know a lot of people on there, and they support the movement. They're never gonna own a
Right,
chicken.
they're not looking for chickens
That's why I said they
themselves.
live in condos and things, they're never gonna own them.
Right.
But they support the movement, and they're signing on, and that's fine. I just, honestly, I can't support it at this point. I don't think the city's ready, and I don't think the education has been there for the residents of the city. I think it's gonna come down to a large education on proponents' parts to educate the city.
If I could say something. I think that Lowell is a specific political animal, that is different from other communities in the Merrimack Valley. In Massachusetts, probably the whole galaxy. It's an anomaly. I don't think that we can apply the abstracted educational components to the way that Lowell is built geographically or in the demographics of Lowell. I mean, we've brought hundreds of little factoids to bear on this topic over the course of several hours, and people are still up in the air about how they feel on it and are vacillating back and forth on it. I think that having a pilot project genuinely says, with objective information, this is what this thing is like in Lowell. And I know for a fact that it works because I see it, and I've seen it happening. I saw my first backyard coop in 2003, and I've seen more coops since then. Right. And the amount of complaints that have been happening, because I know these people, anecdotally, have been like nothing, because the issue has come to bear now and has been politicized. I think that has made it hard and ugly, and I think that if we just get past some of this and just create kind of a petri dish wherein the specific thing that Lowell is can grow to understand how it feels about this thing, because it is happening. It just, these people, myself included, need to just be able to come out of the dark and be seen and be counted, because yes, there are a mass number of, the majority of people in the city don't own pets, but there is a minority that owns pets, and we have regulation around that. Now, is that a larger demographic than it is in regards to chickens? Yes, but I think that it can be addressed, it should be addressed, and we have the available resources. There are people that are responsible, there are people that are knowledgeable, myself included. I'm here, and I'm saying, my information, my effort, I'm here to give it, and I know that there are other people that would feel that if they were given the opportunity to do so, they would follow suit with me. They're just afraid, and they don't want to have people crawling around, trying to seek them out and talking to their neighbors and basically, blackmailing them in the paper, having people come out and snoop around in their yards, the feeling of being persecuted and sent, hundreds of dollars worth of fines. And people don't want to deal with that. And this is going to continue. They're going to continue to do it. I want to see us moving forward and not coming across as a social and political backwater. I want us to be progressive on this, and I think that we have the available resources to do that.
Well, I agree about the political aspect. That's why I asked the Animal Control Officer and the Board of Health come up, because the bullet points on both sides were coming back and forth, and I'd prefer we hear from them and not people talk for them. But, Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming down tonight. I think over the last 2 meetings, we had good discussion. I am going to agree with my colleagues on this. I think, I've heard from a lot of you, and I think that a key word is everybody wants to say that we want to keep Lowell moving forward. Well, we do, but let's be smart about it. And I think for the same reasons right now, I don't think the city of Lowell is ready to to handle the extra inspections, what happens with the animals when they're abandoned, what's going to happen with the wildlife around them. It doesn't mean that if this doesn't go forward, that it's an issue that you can't bring up. I think once it's, there's a little more education, once the city can prepare a little bit more for this, maybe it could work. And I've read all the information that you've given us on this, and it's good. But I feel right now, looking for the majority, what we have to do isn't an easy decision, but we have to look out for the majority of people in the city right now, and I think that this is going to be something that we're unprepared for at this time. But again, like I said, it could come up again. So I want to thank everybody for coming down. I want to ask if there's a motion to be made.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I came late because I was picking
Sure,
up my
go
son. Is
ahead.
it okay? My name is Alex Tubielli. I live at 33 Middle Street. And if I can just briefly add that I've been trying to follow what's been going on with the discussion about the ordinance to allow or to have chickens in the yards. And I just want to mention that I am a resident of the city. I'm not affiliated with a neighborhood group, and I live in a condo. So unfortunately, I have not had the pleasure of having my door be knocked on by any of the individuals interested in running for city council. So I feel like my opinion may not have been represented here, and that's not to be disrespectful to anyone. But nobody's asked me, and I ran into my neighbor on the way here, and nobody asked her. And I think that we're both, even though we're not able to have chickens, obviously, in our condominiums, we are interested in and would love to make it possible for our neighbors to have them. I think that the possibility of a pilot program could really address a lot of the issues and fears that I feel like are being addressed here. And I'd just like to say that you had mentioned before that no decisions could be made right now, and the council would have to vote on it. But as a citizen, I think that it would be a great vote of confidence from the council and to the rest of the people in our community to at least consider the idea of working with these people who are so passionate and who are so responsible to even have a pilot program. And the benefits to it, I feel like, are education, not just for the citizens who would be interested in continuing with this, but also for kids who could learn so much more through this. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody for putting all this thought into this. But I'd just like to urge you to please think about coming up some sort of a compromise, because it's not just the issue of having chickens that I think that we'd be talking about, but it's the issue of whether or not the average citizen who has an idea that people might think is crazy or doesn't make sense or doesn't fit can feel comfortable and confident that they'll be able to talk about it and be heard and be taken seriously. So again, thank you all so much. And if any of you guys get buzzed in at Middle Street, I'd be happy to talk with you about the city. So thank you.
Thank you. And you make
I'm sorry?
you make some very valid points.
Thank
You know, we're not saying that we're not open to new ideas. We just want to make sure that we're prepared. But we're short of time right now. If we have another meeting coming up, Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, just very briefly, I clearly have expressed my opinion on this at the outset, not because, for no other reason other, I just don't think it's practical in the city. I'm sure at some level there are benefits, but as it has been stated, I think, by many members, we are a very densely populated city. And if you do look at the problems that do come with chickens, I don't think that we can afford the resources to be chasing these problems. I think we have a whole host of other issues that we need to dedicate our resources on. And if this can't be applied across the board, then I see that opening up. That's a Pandora's box if we just let some communities, some neighborhoods that do have, they may have a little bit of extra room, and then we have some parts of the city that have absolutely no room. So that is the reasoning, my reasoning for not supporting this and at the outset, because if you can't give everybody the same opportunity, then it shouldn't be given to anyone, just a select group in a particular section of the city. So I I do appreciate the people coming down and putting forth their position, but as I stated in the past, I don't think we should be pursuing this, and people have, most people that I have spoken to, in fact, everyone that has spoken to me, just do not think this is a good idea for, for a variety of reasons, whether it's health, or whether it's nuisance, or whether it's using resources to have to enforce those violators. And let's face it, there are now. So it just doesn't make sense to me. So I just wanted to reiterate my point.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm sorry, I have to let Councilor Mercia go, and we're just running out of time. Very quickly?
Very quickly, especially since she has to leave. She wasn't here when the animal control officer spoke, and I was wondering if you could repeat the amount of complaints that were actually made for chickens and farm animals, and repeat the fact that it was not because of noise or smell. It's just because of the fact that they were being kept, in Lowell without.
With all due
with the-
respect, we do understand that, and
But you guys have also said that you knock on doors and everybody's against it. You said, Councilor.
Everybody,
Oh, not everybody.
I said a great majority of the
Majority
people.
of them.
And
Okay.
I also said it wasn't because of complaints. What I said was, I think there was a real lack of education here in the city. And I talked about lot sizes, and a lot of people, as Councilor Elliott said, which I had alluded to, if you're going to talk 15, 20,000 square feet or lots, most people in Lowell aren't going to have the opportunity. And I think this debate has been full of bullet points, as I have previously said, but I think it lacked education. I think the urban movement's here, but I think the movement lacked education across the city. And you have a city full of people who lived with this ordinance up until about 95 who had some bad experiences. That's what I said. I said nothing about calls.
Well, in the no, you say that you're out campaigning. You knocked on
And people
20.
are totally against it. But
and-
not
okay.
all of them. You have some, and I got emails and calls
Then-
for some people for it. But I don't think the city of Lowell is ready to move forward on this
With all
issue.
due respect, if you've knocked on 20,000 doors and the majority of the people told you that.
I didn't say 20,000, I
You
said about two.
2,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
okay.
the majority.
And out of that 2,000, how many would you say were against
How many
it?
people have talked? It's probably 3-1, 4-1 against.
4 to 1? Okay. Well, take a look around you today. How many were for and how many were against? So if there were that many people that were that
The first
seriously.
meeting was just the opposite.
I agree, but
Okay, but the first meeting was just the opposite. We had a second meeting because the proponents didn't have an opportunity to speak. And we had a second meeting just so the proponents could come back.
In the end, it's all about votes, and you guys are all just worried about.
It's about what the people
losing
of the
votes.
city
Respect.
want.
We're gonna
It's
have to-
not votes, it's what the people of the city want in the city, and they don't want chickens. And as I said, there's a lack of education.
we're going to have
Hey,
to
I'm
wrap up.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
This is,
Thank you.
It's really not
If we,
about.
if we
I'm sorry.
outlaw
Excuse me.
the individuals in the city who are already educated, the abstract education of the future is going to take place. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Councilor Mercia speak, but please, do not mistake this for fear of votes. We're here to do a job. Whether we get elected or not happens in November. But you can't worry about who's going to be on your side and who's not going to be on your side every time you make a decision here, because you'd go mad. So, just because we don't support this tonight does not mean we're looking for votes or we're looking to lose votes or whatever.
Or that it's a dead
So,
issue.
And certainly not a dead issue. Thank you. Councilor Mercer.
Thank you. I just want you to know that out in Tewksbury on North Street, my grandmother and grandfather lived there. And I said to my mother one day, "Ma, why is there a foundation here? Did Pa have a garage here?" She said, "No, Pa had a chicken coop." I said, "Well, what happened with the chickens?" She said, "One morning I went in to get the chicken, the eggs for Pa, and when I went in there, all the chickens were dead. They were all dead because a weasel went in and sucked all the blood out of their neck, and they all died." And that is the God's truth, whether you believe it or not. I make a motion not to continue to pursue allowing farm animals in the city and halt further discussion.
Okay, roll call on the motion?
Chairman Leahy,
Yes.
Councilor Mercia,
Yes.
Councilor Laurie,
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn, Jim?
Motion to adjourn.